Hey folks, it's the OU Insider YouTube channel, and this is Quick Slants. Parker Thune alongside Jesse Crittenden. It is another Tuesday. It is another installment of the weekly Brent Venables press conference. This one following a loss for the first time all year, and it's been beaten into the ground at this point. It's been explored from every angle. The Sooners did not play their best football or anything remotely resembling it up in Lawrence this past weekend and got surprised by what is, to their credit, a very good Jayhawks team, which is now 6-2 and ranked number 23 in the latest iteration of the AP poll. But Jesse, obviously on the heels of a game like UCF, you figured the Sooners were going to shake back in a big way, find their mojo again, and it was quite the opposite. Very baffling.
It all comes back to what we said, Parker, many times after that UCF game, which was, it was good to get a win. You'll never complain about a win. They made the plays when they needed to, but if they played exactly like that, made the same type of mental mistakes against Kansas, they were going to lose. And they not only did exactly that, they played worse against Kansas, who is a better team than UCF. They played worse against Kansas than they did against UCF. So it's one of those things. They didn't learn from those mistakes. They didn't play better, and as a result, they got beat by a better team on the road.
Now, the guy who, whether fairly or not, has been held most culpable by the fan base in the aftermath of that loss is offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby. And depending on how damning you believe the evidence is, suggesting that Lebby is too tentative or too timid or too one-dimensional to call plays at the University of Oklahoma. The reality is there are a lot of people on social media right now that at the very least are expecting significant improvement from Lebby, and some that are already willing to just cut bait with him, Jesse. Many who have concluded, okay, this isn't going to cut it at the University of Oklahoma. It's time for the Sooners to find a new OC. Very jarring that the narrative can flip that quickly just 3 weeks after Lebby's offense strung together a 75-yard drive in the span of a minute to win the biggest game of the year. But fans are fans. We knew Brent Venables was going to be asked about it today. He was indeed asked about it. And with regard to the criticism of Jeff Lebby from the public and from the fans, here's what Venables had to say about his recently embattled offensive coordinator.
I had that conversation with our team and our staff several times since I've been here, prior to playing our first game, however long ago that was. That's Oklahoma. That's a place like Oklahoma. So that comes with it. And just stay inside out. You're the one in the arena, you being all of us. And again, you have an appreciation for the support, but there's craziness to all of it, and I love the passion and the energy, and when things don't go well, hey man, they have a right to be pissed, but you have a right whether or not you listen to it and let it affect you or not too. And so I've told the players and the coaches and the same stuff, man. Just don't live in that world. It ain't ever going to be good. And if you're just taking a peek, certainly after you can win and take a peek, and it ain't good. And so I don't know, man. I just don't get your value through that, through the applause, through have a respect for it, an appreciation for it, have an understanding for it. But, again, don't value the opinion of people that you never seek advice from. I believe in that. And understand that also, that goes with when you're at a place like Oklahoma on this stage, there's scrutiny that comes with it, with that title, with that job, and even the players. I hate it. The players there. Their body of work is always under a microscope, but that's the way it is in all sports, every level. And so I don't have to counsel him. He's a grown man, but we're all close, and I'm constantly trying to nurture mindset too. because I'm fully aware of everything, both the good and the bad. And when you're doing really well, successfully, I try to keep everybody focused on the right things. That's my, job, as a leader. Too. Let's focus on the controllables always, and focus on our players and our locker room, and again, what we got to do to get better.
Now, if you read between the lines in some of Venables' comments, not necessarily those specific comments, but some things he said elsewhere in the press conference today, some things he said on the coach's show over at Rudy's Barbecue last night, Jesse, it's very clear that Venables wishes as much as anybody that the offensive game plan had been different Saturday, that the Sooners would have taken a bit of a more aggressive approach, especially on that penultimate possession, I suppose, that loomed so large with regards to the outcome of the game. But also doesn't sound like Brent Venables is taking the stance of many fans and go, well, shoot, we got to shake things up.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's about what you would have expected Brent Venables to say. I mean, I don't think anybody thought he was going to throw his coordinator under the bus. And what he basically said was that, that he's had the conversation with his team many times about, not kind of ignoring the outside world, appreciating it for what it is, appreciating the support, but they've got to be able to focus on what's happening on the field. However, it wasn't just all well and good. He did say exactly what you just said, Parker, that this team needs to be more aggressive. I think that was the general complaint from a lot of fans on Saturday, is there was just a lack of aggressiveness. I mean, Dylan Gabriel only threw the ball 12 times before that very last drive. And yeah, the weather's bad, conditions are bad, but look, Kansas made plays down the field when they needed to. Oklahoma didn't. So I think it is going to be interesting to see if we see a noticeable difference in the offensive game plan against Oklahoma State, because really it's not just Kansas, Parker. OU had a lack of aggressiveness against UCF too. And that's when you get into the whole, how much is it Angelo Anthony how much is it him being out? How much is it, Tawee Walker not being able to stay consistently on the field, whether it's injury or, team issues off the field. But if Tawee Walker is back this weekend, it should be interesting to see how much he plays, and if Jeff Lebby dials up the aggressiveness a little bit more. Because if he does, you'd like to think that maybe that's because he's been nudged a little bit by Brent Venables.
Now, Gentry Williams practiced on Monday. Brent Venables admitted that much. He was non-committal about Tawee Walker's status, and perhaps what is more alarming for Sooner fans that are looking ahead to a very dangerous Oklahoma State rushing attack spearheaded by a sudden Heisman candidate in Ollie Gordon. What's perhaps more alarming is that Brent Venables was also non-committal about the status of the guy that has been, to this point, perhaps the Sooners' best overall performer on either side of the ball. That, of course, is linebacker Danny Stutzman, who was injured in the second quarter of the game up in Lawrence, played one snap after the half, and just decided he couldn't do it. That was all we saw of Stutzman up in Kansas. He sat out the remainder of the football game, and Venables has given no strong indication that he will or won't play on Saturday. These were his exact words earlier when asked about Stutzman's status and the potential of Kip Lewis being the one to fill the void in his absence.
Really confident in Kip. As I've said before, he finds the football, plays really hard. He's a two-time, defensive player of the year in the state of Texas from a great program. He knows how to play, knows how to compete. He's really tough. So when he's gotten his small window of opportunity, he's really delivered. I feel good about Danny. He feels pretty confident, but we'll see. It may not be something that we don't know till close to game time.
Kind of goes without saying, Jesse, that when you're about to face off with the best running back in the country, and that's what Ollie Gordon is, he is the best running back in the country, you wouldn't love to have your top tackler sidelined due to injury.
He's not only just their top tackler. I mean, he's their top tackler by a significant margin. I mean, 73 tackles on the season. Jaron Kanik is next with 46. Also 11 and a half tackles for loss on the season. He has the team lead there by a huge amount. And yeah, here's the thing. When you look at what Kansas did really well on Saturday, they ran the ball really, really effectively. Devin Neal is a solid running back. They've got a good offensive line. all those things. But OU's rushing defense has been really good all year until Saturday. And Oklahoma, and what they're about to see in Oklahoma State is a bigger step up. You know, like you said, facing an Ollie Gordon running back who is objectively been the best running back in college football over the last 5 weeks. He leads the country in rushing yards. So I think if OU has any chance of stopping them in any consistent kind of basis, it's going to be with Danny Stutzman on the field. If not, it'll be Kip Lewis, who has made some plays this year, but that's a really big position. That's a hard, difficult position to put a young guy like Kip Lewis in who hasn't played a ton of snaps this season.
Here's an interesting question, Jesse. What does containing Ollie Gordon look like on Saturday? What does the stat line have to be at the end of the day for Ollie Gordon for folks to walk away from that game and go, the Sooners did a good job of defending him?
Yeah, when you're talking about a guy who is averaging almost 200 yards a game and averaging over 8 yards per carry the last 5 weeks, I honestly think I think the best you can reasonably hope for is limiting him to about 5 yards per carry and limiting the amount of explosive plays of over 10 yards or more. So far, Parker, nobody's been able to do that. Nobody has been able to do that over a 5-game pace. I mean, what he's done the last 5 games, he would be on pace over an entire season for over 2,000 rushing yards. So I think it's more about, you're not going to completely limit him. You're not going to completely shut him down, but can you make him be a little less efficient, a little less explosive?
I will say, in getting to know Brent Venables, as we have as reporters over the course of nearly 2 years since he became Oklahoma's head coach, and just spending as much time around him as we have, you learn when Brent Venables is only saying nice things about a player because he has to say nice things, and when he's legitimately impressed with a player. Well, earlier today, he sounded very legitimately impressed with Ollie Gordon.
Ollie's he's just so powerful. He's got a nice spin move and does a good job in pass protection. You know, he mows down a lot of people in pass pro as well, but his patience for a big guy is something that's a little different. It's not just power. He's got speed. And again, in the hole, he can make you miss. He makes a lot of people miss. He breaks a lot of tackles, but he makes a lot of people miss. Just excellent feet. And then he can get to, full speed, 0 to 60 really fast.
The equation seems pretty simple Saturday, Jesse. Just don't let Ollie Gordon beat you. And whatever happens, happens at that point, right? If Alan Bowman throws for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, you just kind of tip your cap at that point. But what would be unforgivable would be allowing Ollie Gordon to be the reason you lose in Stillwater.
Yeah, exactly. And look, this is no disrespect to Alan Bowman, who honestly has been a lot better the last few weeks than he was at the beginning of the season. But I mean, it's still, this offense is all the way around about Ollie Gordon. I mean, it's not even close. On the season, Bowman's averaging under 200 passing yards a game. He is not a dual threat quarterback like Oklahoma has faced the last 2 weeks. He is the definition of a pocket passer. With how much Ollie Gordon's been running the ball, and Parker, he's carried the ball 25 times or more the last 3 weeks. I think you have to sell out to stop the run, particularly with how much OU struggled to defend the run last week or against Kansas. I think you have to sell out to stop the run. And again, I think in college football, when you get to the highest levels, you can't stop everything. What can you live with beating you? And if you're Oklahoma, I think you put the game in Alan Bowman's hands, let him decide things.
Alan Bowman has made a start against Oklahoma before. It was a long, long time ago. How long, you ask? Well, he matched up with Kyler Murray back in 2018 as a true freshman, the starter that evening for Texas Tech in what was, oh my gosh, Jesse, I can't even remember the final score of that football game. No, you know what? I can. 51-46.
That's right.
If my memory serves me correctly. 51-46 was the score of that barn burner in Lubbock. Of course, that was the Kyler Murray offense, and that was the peak Mike Stoops aftermath defense, I suppose. Ruffin McNeil was technically the defensive coordinator at that point. But point is, Alan Bowman's been around that long. Now the 6th-year senior faces off with the Sooners again on behalf of the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And I think when you look at the way these two teams match up, Jesse, and this is something that was pointed out to me earlier today by a radio listener. I can't take credit for this being an original observation, but I think this observation does hold some merit. When you look at the way these two teams match up, this may be more conducive to an Oklahoma victory than the matchup with UCF or Kansas, because UCF and Kansas both have offensive schemes that employ a lot of misdirection, and more conspicuously, they have a mobile quarterback, which for many moons has been one of the Achilles heels for a Brent Venables coached defense. Oklahoma State's offensive game plan is very straightforward. They're going to hand the ball off to Ollie Gordon, and whatever they get in the passing game is going to be set up because the defense is selling out toward the run. What do you think?
No, I largely agree with that. And you're right. I mean, I think Ollie Gordon, for as great as he's been, he hasn't been super involved in the passing game. I mean, he had a 6-catch, 116-yard performance against Kansas 3 weeks ago, but since then, he had 0 catches against West Virginia, then 4 catches for 21 yards against Cincinnati. They don't do anything outside the box. Kansas, really, even in comparison to UCF, did a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of weird formations, especially early in the game. Some of that stuff they were doing was pretty bizarre and rare for college football. And we've talked to some players. We talked to some players on Monday night, and they've kind of said, yeah, it is a little bit more straightforward offense from Oklahoma State. They're not reinventing the wheel. However, I think Oklahoma State the last few weeks is playing as well as almost anybody in college football. Brent Venables made sure to mention it during his press conference that, hey, everybody wrote them off after that South Alabama loss, and since then they've been really good. So I think while you will see a more straightforward game plan, I do think the threat that Ollie Gordon presents negates some of that to some extent. But if nothing else, I do think this will allow Brent Venables to maybe be a little bit more aggressive with blitzes, maybe a little more aggressive with schemes, things like that. Maybe those types of things tilt the scales a little bit in Oklahoma's favor.
Big picture question here, Jesse. You have 2 games this weekend that essentially amount to elimination games in the race for a berth in the Big 12 championship. You have Bedlam, and then you have Kansas State visiting Texas down in Austin. A 5-way tie atop the Big 12 standings. The 4 aforementioned teams and Iowa State all have 1 conference loss. I want to get your pulse on this. Is this still an Oklahoma-Texas Big 12 championship matchup in your eyes?
Oh, boy. That's a good question. So much has changed since that OU Texas game for both teams. So much has changed. I mean, Quinn Ewers is out. Texas is being led by a backup quarterback. Iowa State, a team that I think largely nobody really took seriously before the year, all of a sudden is genuinely in the thick of the Big 12 mix. Oklahoma State, again, a team that everybody had written off. All of a sudden, a path to the Big 12 title game is viable. I think it's really going to come down to this weekend, Parker. I think you're right, because I think from an Oklahoma perspective, the only team they play, the rest, or they don't play any team this weekend that's in the top 5. They don't play any other team in the top 5. So basically, Oklahoma won't control its destiny to get to the Big 12 title game. So I think if you win this game, you get back into sole position of first place in the Big 12. That makes everything way easier, not to mention you're not playing in any of those teams at the top of the conference, then the path gets a lot easier. You lose it, all of a sudden, you're not in first place, and you don't control your own destiny, and you don't play any of the teams at the top of the conference. So if I had to say, I still like OU and Texas to get there, but I think if either team loses this weekend, I think those chances diminish significantly.
Who would have imagined a month and a half ago when South Alabama was curb stomping Oklahoma State up in Stillwater that we would be talking about Bedlam as a game with Big 12 title game implications for both teams? Yet here we are, and we're going to have coverage for you all week on this YouTube channel, as well as on OUinsider.com. Look, you can look forward to the Oklahoma Drill podcast, Field Vision with our guy Brian Clinton breaking down the film, the OU Insider Under the Visor pregame podcast, OU Insider Live on Wednesday night, and of course, tons of recruiting nuggets over at OUinsider.com if you're curious on how things are shaping up on the trail for Oklahoma, not just in the 2024 cycle, but in 2025 as well. Don't forget either, Sooner basketball starts soon. We got you covered, not just on the hardwood, but on the recruiting trail as well, over at OUinsider.com. So if you are not a VIP, would highly recommend you sign up for just a few bucks a month. Trust me, it's worth the investment. We hope to see you over there. We'll certainly see you back here. Tap that subscribe button if you haven't already. This is Quick Slants. That is Jesse Crittenden. I am Parker Thune. We'll talk to you next time.